Okay, so I just thought it would be really interesting to go over this really quickly. But one of the main discords that I'm part of that does like leaks and everything like that has sort of kind of posted, I guess, like a vague subject to change sort of bit of information that has come to light from the developer app of the game. And he says to make sure that you kind of take this with a grain of salt because the developer app changes every single day. I'm sure a lot of information comes like in and out of it, and I'm sure things change a million times over before they actually hit the live version of the game. So, be sure to take this with a grain of salt. Like, none of this is absolutely confirmed 100%. Some of the things are obvious, like that they will be coming in the future, but don't jump to conclusions with any of it. It's all just sort of like speculation with what they've kind of been messing around with in the developer app. So new events is the first title. We have disasters, which I would assume is some sort of new maybe disaster event, or maybe they're planning on doing some sort of new story or something like that with the 7 catastrophes. I could only assume that's probably what's going to happen because, as you know, we're pretty much getting close to the end of the actual game. As far as like the main anime content and stuff like that goes. Obviously for us on the actual story front, we pretty much have like the whole like next season that we still have to go through, but the anime is actually finishing up relatively soon, so there's only limited amount of content that we can sort of pull from the anime and the manga because the manga's been finished. The anime's about to be over as far as the like subbed anime goes. So if you've been keeping up with that, you kind of know what's gonna like sort of unfold and come to the game sort of soonish, but it's just a matter of how the developers choose to sort of release that content. So yeah, that should be really interesting. The second anniversary, this one is going to be really interesting because obviously the release date for the Japanese and Korean version of the game are completely different than the global version of the game because there was a 6-month difference there. And I would assume that I don't really know how they're going to end up syncing those up because obviously they're planning on syncing the two versions sort of together to where they're on the same wavelength. And the second anniversary for JP and Korea are not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same date anniversary, but I'm sure we're going to get sort of the same content and they'll just pass it off as some sort of different celebration, which is probably going to end up being a bad thing for us because although, it's cool for, the Japanese and Korean version of the game to celebrate their second anniversary, if we end up doing 5 festivals in a row, I'm probably going to blow my brains out because it's just absolutely ridiculous how many festivals we've had in a row at this point. Like, it's mentally draining me trying to wrap my head around, like, how to deal with this sort of thing. Like, they really need to find some way to sort of either, compensate the player base because of all of this or just slow it down on some end. Like, I know that it's an anniversary. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to end up doing a festival for it, but Jesus, man, come on now. Anyway, moving past that, we've already kind of went over that bridge this week. There are 2 collaborations apparently in the files at the moment. If you remember back, they actually had a Stranger Things collab, a ReZero collab, and I think it was a Fate collab as well. He goes on down here a little bit later to go in more detail with that, so I won't touch on it too much. We'll just grab it in a minute. But then after that, you have Super Boss Returns, and then in parentheses, this is a Hall of Fame, which I don't know if that's just going to be something that's like constantly in the game, in the Temple of Belinus or whatever, where you can just go back and fight old bosses or something like that, or if it's just going to be like a reworked title of them sort of trying to bring old final bosses back and letting you just do what they've kind of been doing as far as like reruns of final bosses go. I think it would be really interesting if you could mess with old final bosses and stuff like that in the Temple of Belinus, if like they just were like not in season or something like that. Maybe you could get some sort of rewards out of doing them, but it wouldn't be like super crazy rewards unless it was like an active final boss season or something like that. I have really no idea what they're planning on doing with this. Of course, it's just all speculation as far as I'm just giving a personal opinion on it. But then we have new characters, which actually is a pretty big one. So the biggest notable one is that they have a festival category, and obviously Arthur is in it. So I think that's really cool. But if I'm not mistaken, we just got to the point in the story where Arthur is kind of poof, gone. But you know, I don't know. I think it's really cool. I think Arthur could actually have a pretty cool sort of festival unit. Actually, I don't know if he's gone just yet. But you know, he does wield Excalibur at some point, and I think that an Excalibur Arthur could be a really interesting character. It just depends on how he actually like gets sort of treated as far as his passive and stuff like that goes in the game, on whether or not he'll actually be good, because he's obviously a human, and you know, maybe if he did some sort of like buff to humans or something like that, which if they do that, Escanor is going to be even worse than he already is. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what they would do with this, but I would only assume that it would be an Excalibur Arthur, because I think we're actually getting really close to that point in the story. So it's probably going to end up being pretty soon for the second anniversary if they do one. So yeah, like when they get around to it, not if they do one, because they're gonna do one, you know they are. Humans, so there's Hauser and Roe. Roe is like the flashback sort of version when they go back in the past for the Holy War Festival, and you see King and Deanne sort of disguised as Gloxinia and Droll and everything like that. I think that's in the 4th season. We've already went through that in the actual like show, or the actual game itself. We've already done those chapters in the story, so it's kind of cool that Roe's getting his own unit. Somebody in my chat the other night when we were live streaming was actually just saying that it would be really cool to get a new Hauser unit, and I kind of agree with that. We've got, if I'm not mistaken, we have 2 Hauser units that don't have his like spear thing, and then we have the 1 Hauser unit that does. But Hauser becomes like the new Grandmaster and everything, so I think it would be really cool to see like a Grandmaster Hauser or something like that. I think that would be really interesting. And then for each of the categories, like from here on out, there's unknown units. I'm assuming that just means that they either have them sort of titled differently or under some sort of code name as far as the actual files and stuff like that goes, so it's probably hard for him to actually determine which of these units is what, if it's just a whole bunch of like letters and numbers, or just sort of like really like harshly abbreviated and stuff like that. So yeah, there are characters that might be coming under those tags, but obviously we don't know what they are just yet. Giants, apparently I think it's pretty self-known, or like you should kind of know at this point, that we're going to be ending up getting the 3rd variant of each of the commandments. We obviously, with the announcement of the new Zeldris, we have a green Zeldris now, which he's a festival unit. We just got Blue Derriere not too long ago. You know, eventually they're going to go through the rest of the lineup and sort of add that 3rd commandment, like different, like the other color that we would need, I guess, for each color of the commandments. So we got a new Droll under Giants, 1 unknown Giant as well. We got a new Gloxinia, 2 other fairies that are unknown, which is really interesting, because I think that could mean maybe like a new Gerard unit or a new King unit, or, you know, something like that. You never know with that sort of tag. Goddess, we have Solad, which is really interesting because Solad, spoilers from the anime, is taken over by, I want to say Sariel is the one that takes him over, so I think it would be really interesting. I'm pretty sure that's what that's going to be, so that could be really interesting. And then we have 3 other unknown Goddess units, which could be really I guess interesting. I really hope Narabasta is one of them, because I think she would be like a cool sort of like support unit for the Goddess tag. But we'll have to see on that one. And then we've got demons. Cusack is a pretty, you know, a given. Like, if they just added Chandler, it's only right that they're going to end up adding Cusack at some point. Apparently there's going to be a new Melascula. I kind of hope that, for my sake, and because I screwed up doing UR gear for Melascula, I accidentally gave her a attack defense set. So it would be very nice for me personally if they added a sort of like offensive sort of Melascula, whether it be like the snake form Melascula that we just went up against in the newest like story chapter, or whatever the case may be. But if it's an attack defense like sort of offensive Melascula, that would be fantastic for me. And I think that could be a cool unit in general. 3 other unknown demon units. So you never knew who those are going to be. Unknown units, we have Kath, which is like the small cat that Arthur sort of like keeps with him in the newer chapters and stuff like that. So I think that could be really interesting. I wonder if he's going to be like a standalone unit, or it'll be like maybe a double unit, sort of like Oslo and Hawk, where it's like Kath and Arthur, or, you know, something along those lines. That would be really interesting. And then they have Gelda, which is really kind of weird because she's a vampire. And they're putting it under the unknown tag. I guess that only makes sense because, as far as I know, so far in the anime and the manga and everything like that, I don't think there's any other sort of like notable vampires. Like, there's a whole vampire faction, I guess, but they don't really touch on it at all except for Gelda. So I think that's really interesting. She could be kind of cool. It would be really interesting if she like buffed like Zeldris units or something like that, like a direct buff for a character. Could be kind of cool, but obviously it'd be easy to shut her down, and like if, you know, you kill Zeldris or something like that, she would become useless. So maybe not, but kind of interesting. There's also 5 other unknown units, so that's kind of interesting as well. Getting down to the collaborations, there are 2 collaborations in the game: Stranger Things and a new one. He says it's not the Fate collab, so that's really interesting. I don't know if they've dropped the Fate collab in general, or if they just haven't sort of done any sort of new information on it, which obviously, you know, I'm sure that as far as like the developers go, I'm sure they sort of maybe start to set things in motion, and maybe some things don't pan out, so they end up scrapping old ideas and stuff like that, because they've obviously never announced anything for real about the Stranger Things collab. So even if they end up getting all the way to the point where they're ready to like actually release it, it could never come out, and they, you know, would never make an actual full announcement for it, because, you know, why would they? So I guess the Fates collab may be on like the back burner, or it may have gotten scrapped. We don't know yet. And he says apparently they did not cancel the Stranger Things collab. There was a lot of talk about the Stranger Things collab getting sort of like scrapped and gotten rid of, but right after the ReZero collab and everything like that started to come out, they still ended up adding a bunch of Stranger Things like sort of like files and stuff like that into the JP and Korean versions of the game. So I guessed it wasn't really like completely scrapped or anything like that. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of like promotional sort of thing, like a promo, like they're going to release it alongside with the new season of Stranger Things, maybe to kind of help promote it, I guess, which would be really interesting. I still don't like the idea of a Stranger Things collab, but I mean, if they end up adding it, what am I gonna do? So he says that he's still waiting for more information about the new collab, because I'm assuming he probably either doesn't have enough information off of the files that they've added to really determine what collab it is, or he's waiting to see more files to sort of get a better grasp on what the like specific collaboration is. Other changes, he says they want to include more heroes that revive themselves and allies to make the matches longer, which honestly I'm not a huge fan of. The whole like idea of the fact that like you can already sort of build these like really tanky teams that can like sort of just last a really long time and everything like that, and like you hit the sort of like PvP timer thing where it starts to like degrade your HP and everything like that over time. Like, why would you want to extend matches even further than that? Like, it's a mobile game. More than likely, like, you should be marketing it towards like the fact that most of your players are going to be playing on a mobile device. Whether they're at home or not is, you know, completely to be determined. But, you know, if I'm like, you know, at work, I'm on my break or whatever, I don't want to like I don't want to pull out my phone and be like, hey, I'm going to do a quick PvP match, and then because they've got 6 units on their team that revive, like I end up, you know, running through my entire, you know, time limit or whatever like that I have to play the game just because you know, they want the matches to be longer. I don't think that's really smart, in my opinion. Like, you would really kind of want the game to be as like fast-paced and as quick as possible. I think that's the one thing that I really do like about geared PvP, is that because of the gear and like multiplying substats and stuff like that, you could do absolutely insane damage and wipe characters off the board like super fast, and they're either going to forfeit or you're just going to end up, you know, killing off the rest of their team, and the match is pretty much over with. Like, sometimes in ungeared PvP, because you can only do X amount of damage because you're not, you know, taking gear into account, The matches are just in that nature, they're shorter, or they're longer than the ungeared or the geared matches. Sorry, I can't speak. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really agree with this. Hopefully they end up kind of scrapping that idea, because, you know, I don't really think that it's smart. Like, I guess if there's already one hero that can revive, like Goddess Liz, and then even Red Melascula can keep a character alive, I guess it's not out of this, you know, it's not completely unheard of that they would add more characters that could do so, but I don't really like that idea. I think it's kind of dumb. I don't want the matches to go even further than they already are. I think it's at a decent pace. If not, the matches are already too long. So, yeah. Anyways, units from the Slime collab will receive a buff. This is actually huge, because Slime collab units are the only units in the game that do not have access to UR gear. As if anyone in their right mind is really going to give them UR gear, but depending on what sort of buff they end up giving those units, because they are pretty outdated units. It was the first collab to ever come to the game. On Global, the collab came out just a couple of, like a month or maybe just a couple of months into the actual game itself. So it was really early, so a lot of these units have been power crept, and I mean, take Kabuki for example. Kabuki still likes to end up using Milim on teams every so often, and every time you can kind of see like how disappointing she is in like the newer metas and stuff like that, because she gets power crept so hard. So it would be nice to see a buff on those characters, but at the same time, if they buff those characters, if they're not going to bring those characters back for more players to get access to them, you're really just going to be creating sort of like this weird, you know, like tension with your community, where it's like, hey, you know, you buffed them, but a lot of us don't have access to those characters because we either started after the collab or we weren't able to get them during the collab. So I don't know. I think they're going to, if they end up sort of buffing those characters, I would imagine they would try to bring that collab back, which they've kind of said that they, I guess, like, they haven't really come out and said it, but I would assume that they want to be able to bring sort of collaborations and stuff like that back around so people can get units that they missed. But up until this point, we have not seen a rerun of a single collab yet. So I don't know. I think it's a really weird spot that we're in. Other than that, he says all of this was seen in the developer app. He said, I repeat again, this isn't a final version and changes every day. So like I said before, and like he has said before, take it all with a grain of salt. A lot of this stuff is subject to change. It probably will change by the time that it actually gets out to the game. Any of this stuff could be canceled and sort of scrapped and like recycled, or just completely changed to something else at the drop of a hat, because none of this is actual official information that you're supposed to know. This is all like behind the scenes stuff that the developers are messing with that they could potentially release, but you know, some of it is obviously going to get changed. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I do like doing sort of like videos like this every so often, because it's really interesting to see like the sort of, I guess, like thought process and sort of just what could be potentially coming up and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're interested in more of these, let me know. But I mean, obviously I can only do them whenever, you know, this sort of information comes out. So I don't data mine or anything like that myself, so I really don't have any way to get access to this information without just being a part of, you know, a community that already does it. So yeah, anyway, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll see you in the next video.